Hey y'all, it's your girl, Dr. Makeba, host of the Healthy Woman Podcast, a talk therapy platform curating healthy conversations so that women like you can serve God while also pursuing an optimal state of holistic health. All right. Hey, girl. Welcome to the Healthy Woman Podcast. If this is your first time checking us out, welcome. You are going to love it here, and you're also family now, so you're no longer a visitor. But if you are an OG listener, so that means if you're someone who has been rocking with us for a little while, or at least rocking with me for a little while, and you listen to my videos and you listen to anything that I've shared openly on the socials, then that means that you're a member of my family. So you know the drill. Go ahead and share out this episode that you're listening to right now to just one girlfriend so that we can double our reach with the click of your share, right? We don't have to share it out to 100 people. If you just share it out to one person, that instantly doubles our reach. So if you go ahead and do that for me, I will be very, very grateful. So I'm so excited about this podcast, D. We are here.
Yes, we are.
Finally.
We made it.
We're so excited. This has been a work in progress. This has been a prayer in progress. And I am so excited that God has finally brought us to this day. So this is the very first episode of the Healthy Woman Podcast. And I'm super excited about the woman that I'm going to be having a conversation with today. There's a whole story behind, like, we're from the same hometown in Florida, but we've never personally met. We've spoken on the socials. We have some mutual friends, interests and friends, but we have not met each other personally. However, we connected on social media. And what's interesting is I have a lot of really close people in my life that I've actually met on social media. So sometimes social media can be a good thing. Can actually be a good thing. I don't know if that's something you experienced, D. But social media can actually be a great thing. And so this is proof positive that it is. Miss Paula Collins is going to be my guest today. And so I'm going to share a little bit about Miss Paula because I love everything about what she's doing. I love everything about what she represents. And we're going to get into it a little bit as we talk today. Again, the Healthy Woman Podcast focuses on various nuances of women's health. So we're talking about our physical health, we're talking about our mental health, our emotional health, our financial health, our spiritual health. All of those different health elements is what we focus on. And we do all of this so that we can ensure you are properly positioned and prepared to execute on the purpose that God has created you to do. And you cannot do that if you're not functioning within an optimal state of health. So that said, Paula Collins is a wife of 29 years, and she's a mother to 4 adult daughters and 3 grandbabies. She is a proud Army veteran. You know, I'm an Air Force veteran, and I have to say this because every time I go speak somewhere, I'm always the one Air Force veteran is always eclipsed by a room full of Army veterans. And like they have like the monopoly over the armed forces. So this is so interesting that I'm actually getting ready to sit down and talk to an Army veteran. But she's also a recent breast cancer survivor. We're going to get into that a little bit as well. She's a transformational coach. She's the founder of PCMinistries, Paula Collins Ministry. She's the owner of the Talking Teas and also serves as a marriage and relationship mentor alongside her husband, Mr. Johnny Collins. Having watched her mother deal with bitterness and hurt, Paula became extremely passionate about inner healing and accountability. And being led by God, she created PCMinistries, which we're going to talk a little bit about also. Within her ministry, she deals with what you feel from the inside out. So she's talking about I'm not going to tell you what she's talking about. We're going to let her tell us what she's talking about in her ministry. But I'm so excited to hear about it. Her transformation coaching harnesses the power of the mind and heart by intentionally targeting inner thoughts while provoking accountability of your actions. Paula's goal is to be an example of inner freedom and to spread the gospel of Christ through her very practical, tight but right approach to life and ministry. So that means that she get in your business and she makes sure that she holding you. I know what that type but right mean. So that's what that means. But that's her approach to life and ministry. One interaction with her transparent and unabashed style of teaching will compel you to want to be authentic and true to who you really are. God only anoints the real you. That right there is a message all by itself. God can't do anything with somebody you pretend to be, right? So we can talk about that also. I'm so excited, Paula. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Healthy Woman Pod.
Thank you for having me. I am excited to be here.
Yay. Okay, so Paula,
Mhm.
so tell me, so we're from the same area down
Yes,
south, well, Central Florida,
yes.
and we never personally met, right? Like,
Mhm.
did we literally meet on Facebook? Is that how we met?
Yeah, I think it was. I started following you. I started seeing a lot of your posts, and I followed you,
Okay,
and I had seen you before at church, but just like you said, never really met. But it was. I saw you on Facebook, and I liked what you were doing, and you were someone that I wanted to look up to.
okay.
So I started following you.
So this is interesting. So she says she saw me at church. That means that me and Paula have had some interaction with each other for over 15 years because I left Central Florida in 2010.
Yes,
So if you saw me at church, then that was
Mhm.
before 2010. And
Right.
so we like she just described, we just reconnected on Facebook. I
Mhm.
just think that's so interesting because social media it gets a bad rap sometimes because
Yeah.
people don't use social media in in a responsible way.
Right.
But I have some of the most amazing people in my life from social media.
Yes. Yes. I
Really,
can attest to that.
yeah. So I
Mhm.
think if you use social media in a responsible way, um, and you give yourself the opportunity to just build relationship and meet up with people, like
Mhm.
you'll have some positive relationships that can lead to what we're doing today, right?
Exactly.
Like you're the very first guest of this desire that God placed in my heart to launch this podcast. And when I was thinking about like who am I gonna get? Who do I want to help me um bring this to the world? It was you. Um
I'm
so I'm
honored.
excited about this. So our focus today, Paula, we're going to be talking about some physical health stuff, mental, emotional, but whatever you feel comfortable talking about, feel free, um,
Okay.
as transparent as you'd like or whatever. But I just love the art of storytelling. And I just love for you just to kind of share your story with us. So we're just going to jump right in.
Okay.
So, I know you recently started or became hyper focused on your ministry, and as your bio indicated,
Mhm.
PCMinistries focuses in on some core elements that have to deal with women.
Yes.
And so, I want you to tell me a little bit about PCMinistries and what it is, what it does, who do you connect with, how does it change the woman so that she's prepared to do whatever the work is that she's doing for God.
Okay. In order to do that, let me go back a little bit in the history of the basis of PC Ministries. I grew up in a family of three girls, three boys. And to make a long story short, I had a mother that was very critical, that was very bitter, very jealous. And she treated her girls different than she treated her boys. Um, there was a lot of you just put it like this. I grew up with a with the notion that my mother didn't like me.
Mm.
So you can imagine a little girl growing up reaching for that mother, needing that mother, and that mother doesn't like you.
Yeah, that's
Like
difficult.
she didn't really even want you. That's how you feel.
Mhm.
So growing up under that, as I grew older, God began to show me, and I was in my adult when God began to show me. He allowed me to see her and to understand some of the things that she had gone through. Because again, someone can't give you something that they never received,
Right.
you
Yep.
know. And I just grew to understand through God's teaching that that was the story. She was hurt as a little girl. She wasn't nurtured. She wasn't cared for properly. She was abused physically and all of that thing that added into her life. So she goes and she has these children, and my mother was hurt by the women in her life.
Mhm.
She was taken advantage of by the women in her life. So there goes her issue with women, whether they were her daughters or not. So and my mother passed away in 2007. And I grew up seeing her be one way at home and totally different at church or with others. And as a little girl, I was confused because,
This not the person I see right on a regular basis.
Yeah. And she was very, she didn't know how to love me. She didn't know how to nurture me. And it was confusing because she knew how to do it for my brother. We were only 15 months apart. So how does he get all this love and attention and he's so great and I'm just her? I'm just her over here. And God began to show me that. And I say that to say that's the reason PC Ministries deals with what you feel from the inside out. Because my mother was very bitter. She was very hurt. She was very jealous, very critical. And I began to come to understand all of that through the teaching of Christ, because he began to show me her, show me how to deal with her, show me how to love her through all of that and not take it personal. And I look back now and see, okay, all of that was for a reason. All of that was for a reason. All of that. And birth PC.
Yeah, so I'm glad. Oh, I'm so glad you just said that. So I often say to people, like when we're talking about purpose, so my whole thing is purpose. And one of the things that I often say when I have these questions that are asked, like, how do I know like what my purpose is and this, that, and the other? So it's kind of twofold, right? But the number one thing is your purpose. The method of how you deliver that purpose is always going to be out of something that you have experienced, right? There's nothing that God is going to allow you to experience that's not going to be used later, right?
Exactly.
So I just love that you said that you realized that it all happened for a reason.
Yeah.
And as you got older and matured and was able to heal from that, now you're able to turn it into a ministry where you take that and help other people.
Exactly. And it also creates, when you go through those experiences, it gives you the passion that you need to fulfill your purpose.
Correct.
When you're passionate, nothing can stop you with teaching. Nothing can stop you with pursuing what it is God has you to do. So it creates that passion in you. And I just thank God for that. And I think sometimes when we go through things in life, like I did my live last night, my Freedom Friday. And one of the things I said, we get so focused on the pain of what we're going through that we don't look for the purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. And, and we get caught up in, oh my God, I can't believe this has happened to me. And why was this done to me? And why was this? And I can't believe this. And but what about the purpose behind it?
Right.
Like if I would have got caught up and my mother hated me, if I would have got caught up in why did my mom treat me different than my brother, if I would have got caught up in why did my mom give my other two sisters away and keep my other two brothers, if I would have got caught up in that, I wouldn't be here today understanding the purpose of why I was allowed to be in that situation for today. I've helped so many.
Do you think that coming into that knowledge of understanding happens after you're healed? Because as somebody is trying to go, because I'm thinking back to my own experiences. Hindsight, yeah, I can see it. But going into it, while you're in it, no, you can't even wrap your head around purpose
at all.
Right. So it's almost like, okay, well, how do we, develop these women to help them go through it with grace, but also maybe kind of envision that there's something that's going to come out of this while you're going through this. So it will help you to be able to go through it with a little bit more grace.
Yes. I think doing exactly what you're doing now, doing exactly what I do on Freedom Fridays and being transparent about it. Because if you look at us, I know I don't look like what I've been through.
Right.
I know, and that's not being cocky or arrogant. I know that.
Yeah.
But you would look at me and you would think, well, what issue does she have?
Right. What does she have? How's she?
Yeah, she just arrived. I didn't wake up like this.
Yeah.
I didn't wake up like this. So I think just being transparent And I think, with women, how we are with women, breaking that stereotype that we can't get together for real, that, being transparent and open and honest about the things that we've gone through so it can help other women. No one needs to think that I just got it all together, that I woke up fabulous. I didn't wake up like this. But if you look at us and you wouldn't think some of the things that I have gone through. You wouldn't think that unless I said something. And everything that we go through, I believe, is for a reason. When God showed me back when you said, it comes after your healing, I do believe that, because while you're going through, you're not thinking about no purpose.
Yeah.
On Lord, what is this for? You're trying to get through that thing.
Right.
And I think a lot of times when we go through, our traumas and our issues and things like that, the enemy forms filters. So just say you've been rejected over and over and over, you begin to see relationships through the lens of rejection. So even when you're trying to heal, you can't heal because you're not seeing clearly. You're seeing through that tainted lens or that tainted filter, so you can't. So you have to begin the process of healing so you can see clearly, you can hear clearly, you can think clearly. And I just, you can't heal from what you don't reveal.
Oh, and I think it's important also to say that there is not an expectation that you be completely healed before you move in purpose. Because if that's the case, nobody really would move in purpose, right? Because we're all on this healing journey. We're healing once you get to a place where you're healed from something, then something else is going to show its face, and it's another level of that healing process, right? So I think it's important for women to understand that you don't have to be completely healed before you move in purpose, but you do need to have some type of understanding that this is what's happening.
Right.
Right. So thank you. And you know what, when you're talking about your mom and her relationship with women because she had been hurt. So that's part of my story. Well, and when God revealed to me back in 2018 that part of my purpose had to do with women, I rejected it. I mean, I would never forget 400 square foot studio apartment here in Chicago, and the Lord in the kitchen, and the Lord told me that, and I said, "No, that's not what you're saying. I'm not receiving that. So let's go to the drawing board and keep praying." And like the Lord literally said, well, we can keep going back and forth about it, but that's who you're called to. And it was difficult for me because I had been hurt in different areas of my life by women. And it was hard for me to see God saying the very types of people that hurt you are the type of people you're called to. Like that's the type of God that we deal with, right?
Yes.
So when you said that about your mom, like it totally resonated with me, and I like borderline empathized.
Yeah.
Because you don't even realize the level of hurt that you are exuding to the people, even if it is your children.
Yes.
Because you're not healed from that, or you're fully aware.
Yes.
So let's talk about your journey, Paula. So everyone has a story. How much of a role did your journey of experiences play in the forward movement of your ministry? So, your journey, breast cancer. You just talked about your mama. You just talked about your family. So if you want, share a little bit more about your journey, the breast cancer part of it. How did all of this play a role? You already talked about how the issues with your mom played a role. Was anything else heightened after you've gone through this scare of breast cancer? And what was that like for you?
That breast cancer has been by far to this day, and I'll be 56 years old next month, has been by far the most scariest thing I have ever been faced with or endured. The fear that the enemy brings with a life or death situation is just unimaginable. I would have never thought that it was, when you think of cancer, you think, oh my God, oh my God. But it's so much worse than that. And I was talking to a lady who had been newly diagnosed, and one of the things that has been birthed out of this is, and I thank God for a praying husband that ain't scared to speak into your life. He told me, he said, you are a breast cancer survivor influencer. He said, you're going to influence people that's going through this. You're going to teach them how to fight. He said, that's exactly what we've watched you do. And, I pray, I'm always seeking God about why, like, what is this for? What is this for? What is this for? Because I believe in purpose. I don't believe in just doing stuff for nothing. Like, why are we doing this? Like, I have questions. And I said, God, I know you didn't just heal me for nothing. Like, it has to be something. And one of the things I found out just through my journey, through my childhood, a lot of times when we go through things in our childhood, or we go through traumatic experience, whether they're our fault or not, we pick up things along the way. We pick up the way we deal with things. We pick up the way we respond to things. We pick up, ways of dealing. Some of it we use as a spirit of escape, and some of it we use as like survival. Regardless of what it is, I believe that some of the things that we pick up along the way, God can use in our today. So with that being said, I realized when I was going through chemotherapy and radiation and all the surgeries and things, I was like, growing up as a little girl, I wasn't allowed to be emotional. Like, if it was always something wrong with it, or I got criticized for it. So growing up like that, there wasn't I love yous and hugs, and I never heard I'm proud of you. And I was raised in a 2-parent household, and I knew they loved me, but it just wasn't any of that. It wasn't no hugging. It wasn't any of that. So you, as a child growing up, and especially a little girl growing up, you adapt to that. You adapt to the void of that. So I'm not allowed to be emotional because it doesn't matter. It wasn't nurtured. So can you imagine not being allowed to be emotional going through middle school and high school, but you can't be emotional. The things we go through, just normal things. So I say that to say, the way I was able, or I was made or forced to deal with not being allowed to be emotional, helped me in my breast cancer journey, because I didn't give into the emotions behind it. You know how when you get, just imagine being diagnosed with breast cancer. Okay, yeah, when I found a lump in that previous November of 2020, and then I had the biopsy December 20, I cried from November to January. I'm going to be transparent. I was scared and nervous and all the feels. And then when it got confirmed in January, and then I started chemotherapy that February, God began talking. He began like immediately just doing and saying things. And one of the powerful things that I learned going through all of that was that God can use what the devil meant for bad and turn it around and make it work for his good. So some of the behaviors and ways of dealings that I learned as a child through learned behaviors, forced behavior, what have you, I was able to use the area where I was not able to be emotional. I was able to use that in not becoming emotional with the cancer.
Wow.
And what that did was it gave me a strength, because I didn't give into, how some people, and I'm not saying anything about anybody, because everybody's journey is their journey. And
Right.
some people are very, they want you to feel sorry for them. You know, some people want the pity party. Some people want you to know they got cancer and they're going through this. Some people want that. And if that's what they need and they want, good for them.
Right.
I wasn't like that.
Right.
So what that did for me in my journey was it made me stand up in it. It made me look at it and not give into the emotions of, oh my God, I have cancer.
And you
Oh
know
my
what?
God.
So everything that I know about cancer, that helps you survive. When you do so, there's a lot of research, Paula, that says that your mental and your emotional state when after having been diagnosed with cancer can cause you to live or die. And if you play into, and I use that word very carefully,
Yes.
emphatically,
Yes.
if you play into the woe is me, oh my God, I got cancer, and you get lost in it, it can essentially take you out as opposed to standing in it and not allowing yourself. That is so, I mean, it literally could be part of the reason why you're standing here today.
I 100% believe that. 100%. And that is so hard to say because it's just touchy. It's just touchy because cancer can go either way. All I know is this is my journey and this is how God dealt with me. And now I see, because God didn't want me. I went through chemotherapy for 6 months, every week for 6 months. And God said, you're not going to tell anybody. PCMinistries was birthed while I was in chemotherapy. I was going weekly. And God said, I want you to begin PCMinistries, a Facebook Live every Wednesday, dealing with what you feel from the inside out.
Wow.
And I was like, God, did you just hear the diagnosis? Like, do you know I'm going to chemo? You know? So I'm like, man, and he never said anything. It was almost like God said, I said what I said.
He gave you an order, and now you got to be obedient.
Figure it out.
Yep.
So I'm like, I told my husband, I know he said this. I know he said this. It's like, I can't get away from it. And God graced me to, my chemotherapy was on Fridays. So I go on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I'm weak. Tuesday, I'm coming around, and then PCMinistries Wednesday. So I have to muscle myself up and do this live. And when I tell you, God, I'm just in awe of the strength. I am in awe of his presence and just how he lets you know, I got you. And the reason I realized after the fact that he didn't want me to say anything is when I did let everyone know on my last chemotherapy treatment it was August the 6th of 2021, and my family gave me this big dinner and invited close family and friends, and we did it live. And that's when people found out that I had gone through chemotherapy and that I had cancer. And I began to get the comments like, but you were just hosting the women's conference in March. You just spoke at our church in April and you were going through chemotherapy? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, and I was like, oh my God, I see what you're doing. God said in the beginning, he said, I am going to get the glory out of this, and I have my scriptures up here, my main scriptures, where he said in James, he said, consider it all joy when you fall into vast trials and temptations, knowing that the trying of your faith produces patience. God said, I'm going to have a perfect work in you, and you're not going to lack anything.
Yeah.
And when he said, count it all joy, I'm like, okay, Lord, how do you count it all joy in the chemotherapy chair? And when people looked at me and they were like, you did all that and you were going through cancer? You did all that and you were going through chemo? I saw the ministry behind it. I saw God getting the glory behind that. And I was like, oh, so it wasn't being secretive. God said, I'm going to get the glory, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to get the glory. So do what I'm telling you to do, and you'll see what I'm doing. So it was just total obedience. Total obedience. I didn't know.
That is such a mature posture. I hope whenever someone listens to this that they catch that That is such a mature posture to see that it's not about being secretive, it's about God getting the glory, right?
Yes.
And when you said that, I immediately like it grabbed a hold of me because sometimes when people are being secretive or when they want so there's this thing that people say on social media that irks me to no end.
Moving in silence.
Oh my gosh.
I said, y'all move in silence so loud.
You are you don't tell nobody that you moving in silence. Like you don't tell nobody that you getting ready to move in silence. You just do it, right?
Drives me crazy.
That saying drives me nuts because it drives me nuts because of what you just said.
Yeah.
Like, so why are we moving in silence? Are we moving in silence so that you can get the glory? So that at the end, so because when I see that, it's like moving in silence, and then all of a sudden I'll be like, bam, I'm here. Look what I did. Right. But what you just said is so amazing to me because you were like, it's not being secretive, even though you could look at doing chemotherapy as a secret thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't what you said. You didn't say I was being secretive to protect my peace, or I was being secretive to do that. You said being secretive so that God could get the glory when it's done. That is powerful.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
powerful to me.
And that's how he revealed it to me. And I'm telling you, when you're going through something like this, you don't have no choice but to look to God, because my husband couldn't fix it, my kids couldn't fix it, pastor couldn't fix it, I couldn't fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
so it has to be God. So if I have to lean and depend on God through this thing, I need to hear what he's saying.
So
And
you
I
know what?
couldn't.
You know what's also interesting to me, Paula, is the extreme that God will take his children to get the glory. Because what we don't understand is what we go through is never about us.
Never.
Never about us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't realize that though, unless we are maturing in the faith, right? If we're allowing what we're going through to mature us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's never about you.
Mm-hmm.
Breast cancer, you went through it
Mm-hmm.
and God chose you to go through it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that experience wasn't about you because the Bible says, I know the plans I have for you. They're not going to harm you. I just need to use you so that you can do this so that I can get the glory. Because purpose is all about pointing people back to God. That's all purpose is. We can do it through a bunch of different mediums.
Mm-hmm.
We can do it through a bunch of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, purpose is, are you reconciling people to God? And he chose you to go through a very difficult battle to do that. And you had a mistake. Didn't you have surgery?
Double mastectomy, October 21. Yeah.
But God chose you. Why? 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 He chose you because of what you just said. He gets the glory.
And that was something that I developed going through.
Mm-hmm.
See, like I said earlier, we get so focused on the pain that we don't even see the purpose, the
Right.
possible purpose behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was all developed
Over time.
going through.
Right. Over time. That's
Yes.
good.
Like going through.
And that's why I guess you would probably agree that that's why it's important for you to go through with grace.
You have
If you go through overwhelmed with emotion, then you're blocking what God is trying to get you to see.
You can't hear.
Oh,
Because the enemy, can you imagine the fear?
yeah.
Can you imagine the fear? You can't even hear it's like a fear filter that's over your ears.
Yeah.
It's a fear filter that's over your eyes. So every headache, it's so bad. Every time you get a headache, oh my God, could it be cancer? Oh my God, I get a muscle spasm. Oh my God, did it spread to me? And it's like, okay, God, I can't live like this. I can't live like this, like you. And he said it. I have not given you. This is what God. I don't know how God taught anybody else, but this is how he taught. I don't get snickerdoodles and cheese puffs and all the fluff. He said, look at here. If I didn't give you the spirit of fear, where did you get it? Who gave it to you? Why are you carrying it? This is what he told me this time last year. Now, mind you, I was done with chemotherapy August of 21.
Mm-hmm.
I did my double mastectomy October of 21. And I had 6 weeks of daily radiation from December to January of December 21 to January 22.
Daily radiation?
6 weeks of daily radiation.
I know how tough radiation is because my mom went through that, and I don't think she didn't do it daily, but I know what radiation does. Girl, it is a miracle that you're just even sitting here today, like having this conversation with me and
And
having
you,
extracted all of that wisdom from what you went through
and
because
you know
that
what?
was tough.
And you know what? When I got done with everything and I got my clear bill of health and had my scans, and I was trying to get so far away from pink. Like I wanted it behind me. I didn't want nothing to do with, I didn't want to be recognized as no breast cancer survivor. I didn't even want to think about nothing that I had just went through.
Yeah.
I didn't want nothing pink. I didn't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And people kept calling.
Mm-hmm.
People kept referring people to me. And it's like, God, I don't want this. I don't want this mantle. I don't want this platform. I don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when God began to say, and he began to speak.
Yep.
And he began to, this is the platform that I was telling you about before you got diagnosed, when I said a new platform is coming and you thought it was something else.
Mm-hmm.
This is it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to literally accept it. I had to accept
Yeah.
that
This
is my new norm.
I love that.
This is where he's placed me for this season. And once I accepted it, and he knew that I accepted it in here,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't for show, or it wasn't because he fought me with this. I didn't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
I didn't want nothing to do with it. And he said, this is who you are in this season. And once I said, I accept it, the anointing grew. He began to speak more. My transformation coaching picked up. It was just different things that I know, okay, because of my yes, because of my obedience, because of me dying to my flesh and understanding that this is God, then it things started to open up.
But it didn't happen until you accepted it.
Yeah.
I think that's another message that we have to get is God is such a gentleman. He's never going to impose himself on any of us.
Yeah.
And one of the messages that I often relay, and I have to remind myself of this often too, but one of the messages that I relay is you can live an entire life of good. You can even live an entire life of great and still not be in purpose.
That's right.
Because you have not accepted the call that God assigned to you. And the world, socially, from a social standpoint,
Yeah.
Embraces philanthropic efforts.
Yep.
Oh, I give all this money. Oh, I do this for the good. Oh, I help the homeless. Oh, I do this. That's great. Like, it's totally great.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the purpose of mankind, right, is to pick up the work that Jesus left when he ascended to heaven.
That's right.
And that's to help people get there. So all the stuff that you're doing, are you doing that?
Exactly.
And I don't think that we understand the full requirement of a yes, of an accept. I accept the challenge. I accept it. And you know why? This is my personal feeling is because I say it's personal because I had to deal with this myself. I spent years chasing after a business, after this, sense of, I have this vision in my head. I want to be the best tutor. At one time I had a tutoring company in Tallahassee. I wanted to build this big tutoring company. So when I moved to Chicago, I had this great big vision. And I ended up having to disband dismantle the business because it wasn't working right. Then I went from business to business trying to create all of this because I was searching after this socially uh, um, um, perception of what success looked like. And it wasn't until I got to literally last year the early part of last year where I had this revelatory encounter with God where I had to make a decision, Paula. And I had to say, either you're going to do this or you're going to do this. But no, if you do this, this is not what God calls you to do. And you're going to continue to be like a hamster on a wheel
Yeah, just
because you haven't said yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest, I think that is the biggest lesson that we can get out of. There's a lot of lessons we can get out of what you spoke.
Oh, yeah.
One of the biggest lessons that we can get is at the end of the day, God's waiting on your yes. And if you go through an entire life and don't say yes, you wasted an entire life.
Time. You know, I went through, once I got done with everything, and I had breast reconstruction surgery June of last year, and I'm getting ready to have phase 2 of that on Tuesday. So after radiation, all that ended, I had a little bit of time to just kind of not have nothing. Just nothing. No doctors, nothing. Just, whew. So I found myself, I've been working since I was 14 years old, 16 years old. And now at 55, I'm not working. It's like, I got to do something. I got to, and I was just kind of found myself dealing with a little bit of depression because now I'm not what I used to be. And my life has been drastically changed and altered from what I knew it to be. So I will never be able to go back to 100% of the things that I was able to do and could do, or whatever. But I still have life. I still have certain things. So as I was going through that little depression and just feeling, not knowing what to do, not knowing which way to go, and God reminded me of something I said, I want to say probably a couple of years before I got diagnosed. So just say around 2018, 2019. And I was at work and, doing what I did in the social work field. And I said, Lord, if you gave me the opportunity to minister full time, I'll take it in a heartbeat. I wouldn't worry about pay. I wouldn't worry about status, none of that, because my heart is to help people heal from the inside out. And I said, if you gave me that opportunity, I would do it. I didn't know the opportunity was going to come by way of cancer because my job fired me in the middle of chemo. Not because I couldn't do my job the way they wanted me to do it. I had been there 10 years and they fired me. So now I'm at the end of everything and I'm free. I'm healed. I can do, and I want to go back to work. And God said, hey, do you remember?
Ask me for. Come on.
Yeah. And, so it's like, well, God, I didn't. So what this is like. So I had to change my mindset because my mind immediately went to my familiar thing.
Yes, come on.
And God said, you're trying to put new old wineskins in the new wine. That's not gonna work.
Yep.
So I had to change my mind, and it is still a process. It is still a process because it's like when you are a worker and it's just different, and I'm learning this new narrative. I'm learning this new place, this new season, this new level, this new wine. I'm learning all of that. But we have to remember what we said because God brought back to my memory. Remember you said, if you had the opportunity to minister full time.
And so now this also, I'd imagine, gives you a little bit of comfort in knowing, like in trusting him a little bit better. Like, because you're walking into the unknown space, right? You're moving into working ministry full time now, which means that it's, we said we go back to our familiar, which also includes money, right? There's this regular check that's coming every other week. And when you go into ministry, that's not like that, right? And so I feel like, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I feel like now that God has reminded you of what you asked him for, it allows you to depend on him a little bit more, and which is what we know he wants us to do.
Exactly.
But there's no angst or a lot of angst with, well, how's this going to happen? What am I going to do? How am I going to do that? Right?
Yeah. In that same time period where I was going through that little battle of depression and feeling down on myself and whatever. And God said, why don't you believe me? He said, look back at everything that I've done. I've been with you from the beginning. I started speaking to you before you even started chemotherapy. I've shown you things throughout chemotherapy to let you know that I got you. Then you come through it and you heal. You got your report. You have the scans. Nothing, no sign of cancer anywhere. Nothing, nowhere. Why are you battling with this? Like, why don't you believe me? And I was like, God, I don't know. Like, my mom died of 3 forms of cancer. That's all I know. And then people say, you know, this cancer, their mama's sister, cousin, cancer spread from her back to this. And, you know, it's like everything is. And God said, why don't you believe me? And I said, Lord, I don't know. Why don't I believe you? And he said, you trust that I can heal you, but you don't believe I will.
Believe. Woo.
He said, so trust and belief is 2 different things. You trust that I can do it because you see me do it, but you don't believe that I've done it for you. Why? Because I don't dot all my I's and cross all my T's, because I'm not perfect, because I mess up sometimes. God said, I need you to believe that I healed you. He said, I am the God that healeth thee. By my stripes, you are healed, period. Not I'm healing you or I will heal you. By my stripes, you are healed. So I had to get in that word, and I had to create confessions, my own affirmations. I couldn't go on Google and find somebody else's. I had to create my own, because I have to cast down vain imaginations of every high thing that exalts itself against my knowledge of Christ every day. I had to learn.
And what you see every day.
Every day. People with breast cancer, the same kind, every day.
Every day.
I had to fight against survivor's remorse. Like, Lord, why me?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I found out in that, and I'm going to do a teaching on that too, because that's really good, that when the enemy behind the survivor's remorse is to silence you. Mind you,
to make you feel guilty. Yeah.
And I felt that. It's like, why am I feeling sad? I feel like I couldn't be excited because I look over there and his wife died from breast cancer.
Yeah.
I look over there and she looking like cancer. I don't even look like cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, so I stopped doing, ministry, because it's like,
which is what the enemy wanted.
Exactly.
Like now you're battling up against the two. You battle against the enemy over here, who's like, well, if God, okay, so if God gonna heal her, I can't do nothing about that, but I can definitely do something about this. She could be healed in silent.
Yep.
Right. But God over here saying, no, that's not what we're doing. If I'm gonna heal you, I'm not healing you so your voice can be shut. Right.
At all.
So oh wow, this is so good.
Yes, it's a lot, and that's why I began doing the fight for your healing, like find your fight, because God showed me how to do that. And like I said earlier, he doesn't do stuff for you for nothing. What do we do with that? How do we package that up? How do I impact somebody else's life? And that's PCMinistries, and that's what I'm doing. So I have accepted it, and I'm using all of the trauma and the life experience, and he's showing me how to eat the fish and pick out the bones, and use some of the stuff that I've gained along the way to. He said, I need that fight, Paula. I need that one. No, I don't need that version of you. You can put that to death. Go on and slay that one. But I do need that fight, Paula. It's all about.
And I think that, so what I've seen from this is that you have evolved from glory to glory, right? The evolution of your maturity, your maturation process, I feel has allowed God to trust you with his glory.
Yes.
Like I will never ever forget. I was at Truth Revealed, and it was a women's ministry weekend, and Bishop Blue, his wife, was teaching on this Sunday, and she said the reason why God is not doing for you what you're asking him to do is because he knows he cannot trust you with his glory. And this was years, Paula. This is clearly about 20 years ago.
Wow.
And that's the one thing that sticks with me. And I have always said to myself, I want to live a life where God can trust me with his glory, where he can bless me, he can open up doors, and he doesn't have to worry about me saying, look what I did.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
because I don't ever
I'm
want that.
so good. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think that's what I get from you. Like when I listen to your story,
Mhm.
God chose you to go through what you went through because at the end of the day, he knew that he could trust you with his glory. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
at the very beginning, it was scary to get that diagnosis, but God saw the end. And he had Jeremiah 29:11 written all over that. He
Yes.
had to get you to that end.
Yes.
And he can't trust everybody with that. He cannot trust everybody with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's humbling.
Women would have not made it through that
Yeah.
for a number of different reasons. And I mean, justifiably so. That's a
Yeah.
difficult diagnosis to have to walk through, right? A
Yeah.
difficult journey to go through double surgeries, a difficult journey to have to deal with the emotional and the mental vacillation of
Yeah.
experiences, to have to your husband have to see you so weak. You have to see your husband so weak, right? Because he
Yes.
um your children have to see you through a different set of lenses.
Yeah.
It's a difficult journey. That's
Yeah.
why God is so specific about who he calls to do his will. And we don't understand, like, God, why would like we ask questions like, God, why would you choose me? And God is like, you don't see the end. That's why I chose you.
Mm.
Get it, right? But
Yeah.
there's a reason why he's so specific about why he chose this person to do something.
Yeah. It just gives new meaning to the scripture.
Yeah.
You know those scriptures that we just float past?
Mhm.
God won't put more on you than he can handle, than you can handle.
Mhm.
That scripture came alive to me.
Mhm.
It's like, people say God gives his harshest battles to his strongest warriors. I know that's not a scripture, but
But it's a saying.
okay, yeah. And it's like, okay, I will never leave or forsake you. He hadn't left me.
Mm.
Even when I was fearful, even when I was crying, he understood. He understood the fear and told me it was okay.
Yeah.
I have bouts with fear today,
Mhm.
but he's like, no, what did I tell you to say? What's your scripture? What is your affirmation? What's your confession? You have to keep reminding yourself because the enemy goes to and fro. And if he can get in and shoot a dart somewhere and poison, he's going to do it. So I have to put on my armor every day. I have to understand what the armor means. I can't just go throughout my day without seeking first the kingdom of God or spending time with God for him to equip me on a daily basis. I have to renew my mind daily.
Daily.
That's what the scripture says. Now I see why he say daily. Because I can be up today and tomorrow be way out of left field because I didn't renew my mind.
And that's why God, the scripture says that God gives us my grace is sufficient for you today.
Day. Yes.
Worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about it.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
My grace is sufficient for you today. I give you enough grace for 24 hours.
That part.
Just like manna. I give you
Yeah.
enough for today. Tomorrow
Today.
will take care of itself. And so I agree. It's renewing our minds every single day.
Yeah.
Waking
Yeah.
up with a made up mind to do it, right? Because how many times
Yeah.
can you get up in the morning and be like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this today. But you have to
Yeah.
make up your mind to do this every day.
Yeah. And the one of the worst parts of the whole thing, and I was sharing with somebody, and it wasn't even the physical stuff. Like I have neuropathy in my hands and my feet, and there are other things that I'm dealing with, but it wasn't even about the physical pain or the physical. The worst part of this whole thing has been the mental,
Mhm.
the attack on my psyche. That's been if I could go through that without that, it would have been probably a lot easier. But that mental, that was worse than the chemo. It was worse than the double mastectomy. It's worse than the radiation. It's worse than these surgeries. That's worse than the whole thing for me.
So we have about so I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you about your emotional health because I was going to ask how's your emotional health affected, but you actually led into the question.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have about 4 minutes. So I want you
Okay.
to tell me how are you dealing with that? Because this is the Healthy Woman podcast. So we want to get women to just be aware of the
Yeah.
health the health struggles that they may be going through, even if it's not physical. So with you, what you're dealing with right now, you just said that your biggest health struggle is not the physical.
Mm-mm.
The biggest health struggle is the mental. So what are you doing about that?
The word of God. I'm a silent sufferer. So I grew up, which based off of my history that I shared earlier, I kept everything in because I don't want nobody worrying about me because don't nobody care either way. So I keep things in. And one of the things God shared with me going through this, he said, you're going to have to speak. You're going to have to say something. It's not going to be no silent meditation. You're going to have to speak to your mountain. You're going to have to slay the giant. You're going to have to speak to it. So you're going to have to open your mouth. You can't whisper. You can't meditate. And you're going to have to speak. And what I learned was that I had to find it in the word. I had to bring, cancer is a disease. It's a diagnosis. It's sickness. It's life or death situation. Well, I have to say to myself, but God said, by his stripes I'm healed.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremiah says, I healed you because there's an expected end.
Mm-hmm.
I have an expected end for you. So that's how you can count it all joy and move forward because there is an expected end. God told me in the beginning, this is not as unto death. He said it in the beginning. This is not as unto death. So I have to recall what God has said. I have to remind myself what God has said because I can't put my trust in the doctors.
Right.
Can't nobody help me feel better. They just want to medicate you. They're not trying to heal you. So you got to
treat you. That's all.
That's it. So now it's like, Lord, I need you to touch all this medicine and these people and tell me which ones is which because I have to put my trust in him. I cannot lean to my own understanding.
Right.
And that is what helps the psyche. Because again, the enemy, he goes to and fro. Mm-hmm. He knows what I've gone through. So any chance he gets to pull me back into fear, to pull me back into doubt and worry, he does it. I can't give him that access. So in order for me not to get into the emotions and I have moments when I look in the mirror and I look at my breasts and I see the scars and I see the things and it as a woman, but I've learned how to sit in it. I've learned how to sit in it and not run from it and not just sit in it with God.
Yeah.
And remind myself, God said that you are fearfully and wonderfully made and that I am marvelous in his eyes, that no weapon formed against me is going to prosper, that I am who he says I am. I am his workmanship. He created me in his image still. And I have to remind myself of that. So when I have those emotional times and those days, and I do have them currently, I have to remind myself of what God has said because nothing in the world, no thing or no drink, no smoke. Yeah. You know how we turn to those things to medicate, to make us feel better. That stuff doesn't work. Yeah. And I have to turn to God, who is the source of my strength. He is the source of my strength. And I have to turn to him. I can't lean to my own understanding. So that's what I do to help me battle the emotional side of it and the after effects of everything that I've been through.
And I think I'm glad that you spoke. And I wanted to bring that up because I want people to understand that even though your story is phenomenal and you're coming out on the other side of your story, that you're still human, right? And because you're still human, you still experience emotional struggle.
Yes.
You still experience mental struggle.
Yes.
You still experience these physical struggles, right?
Yes.
And sometimes, as Paul says in the Bible, Lord, take this thorn out of my side. And the Lord never did. Because the Lord says, no, that thorn is going to stay there. So you can always need to depend on me. Right. And so your answer to that question is spot on. And I want women to understand that as you're going through your healing journey, whatever that healing journey looks like, we're all going through some type of a healing journey.
Yes.
As you're going through that healing journey, you have to be intentional about how you respond to the suffering, right? How
Yes.
do you have to be intentional about how you respond to the suffering. You cannot allow the suffering to take control. You can't allow the suffering to write the narrative.
Right.
You have to be in control of that. And in the weakness of yourself as a human, that's when you lean to the word, where the word says, His grace is sufficient. In your
Yes.
weakness, He is strong. Right.
Yes.
I love that you said that. I'm glad that you were transparent. I'm glad that you let people see the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm glad.
Yes.
I
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
there's
And one of the things I'll say in my closing is
Mhm,
that the Bible talks about when the enemy comes in like a flood,
mhm,
the spirit of the Lord will raise the standard.
mhm,
We can't raise our own standard.
mm.
See, when the enemy comes in like a flood, we raise our own standard.
Right. Do our try to solve it. We try to solve it. Okay. Okay. Good.
And that's one of the things I learned when I get a bad report or I get something that's okay, Lord. I'm gonna sit behind you. I'm gonna run to Psalm 91 and get under my almighty covering, and I'm gonna sit in your stronghold, and I'm gonna wait for you to give me instruction, or I'm gonna wait for you to lift the standard. We can't lift our own standard.
Mm,
I didn't. It wasn't by my stripes I was healed. I don't have no stripes.
mhm,
It's by his stripes. So we have to understand that when the enemy comes in like a flood in any way in our finances, our relationships, whatever it is, like you said earlier,
mhm.
the spirit of the Lord will lift the standard up against it.
Yes.
So we have to make sure we're not lifting our own standards.
Right. Love it. I
Yes.
love it. Thank you so much. This has been so amazing.
Yes.
I'm so excited that the Lord led me to you to be this. I think this was a great opening to
Thank
what to
you.
kind of give insight to the direction of the podcast and where
Mhm.
we're going and the message that we're wanting to send to people. Um, so I always try to close out with a couple of tips as we're closing out now. Um, we are a little almost 2 minutes over, but I'll leave it up to my engineer to figure out what he'll take out, what he'll take out, what he'll add in there, whatever he do. He's a genius. Um, but I do want to give some helpful tips on breast cancer. So I read a book called Safe Hormones, Smart Women by Dr. Berkson. It's an amazing book. You might want to read it.
Okay.
Safe Hormones, Smart Women, and the author is Dr. Berkson. But since we were talking about helpful tips on breast cancer, a couple of things that I want to share. What we don't realize with breast cancer is a lot of times breast specifically, but more of other cancers as well in men and women. Um, a lot of times are estrogen, like an overabundance of estrogen, is what makes those breast cancers like push, right?
That
And
was
so,
mine.
yeah, like there's estrogen dominance, there's estrogen deficiency, right? And when
Mhm.
you have an estrogen dominance in your body, that makes cancer cells grow.
Okay.
And so a couple of things, helpful tips on breast cancer, brassica veggies. So those are vegetables in the brassica family, bok choy, cabbage, cauliflower, collards, broccoli, Brussels, kale, rutabagas, turnips, those types of things. Those are good vegetables to keep in your diet on a weekly basis. They
Mhm.
contain something called indoles and sulforaphanes that keep sulfur. So if you know what sulfur smells like, that's why broccoli stinks
Yeah.
that's why cauliflower stinks, but it's good, right? There's
Mhm.
a reason for that. But
Mhm.
those compounds keep estrogen safe and protect against cancer. Broccoli is the highest source of those types of things. So you want to eat a lot of broccoli. You
Mhm.
want to rotate many greens throughout your week. You want to eat foods that are high in sulfur, like garlic, onions, broccoli, shallots, eggs. Those
Mhm.
contribute to less cancer. Broccoli by itself promotes a healthy estrogen receptor beta signaling. So our estrogen has estrogen alpha and it has estrogen beta. You want to keep it in estrogen beta because estrogen alpha is kind of what you experience.
Right.
Too much estrogen,
Yes.
the cancer cells are fed through that.
Mhm.
Um, and then the last tip is boiling vegetables. So a lot of times we like to boil like our broccoli. You don't want to do that. So I steam my broccoli,
Mhm.
but you want to steam it, you want to saute it, you want to bake it, roast it, whatever. When you boil your veggies, like broccoli, it damages the enzymes that help your body to get two compounds called IC3 and DIM, which are compounds shown to cause cell death in breast and cervical cancer cells. So I wanted to
Mhm.
add those tips because our diet plays a really nice role in keeping our estrogen. I've had to learn all this on my own because of my own experience, which is another podcast episode
Mhm.
of estrogen craziness. Um,
Wow.
but I wanted to share that. So diet is a really big thing. But that said, Miss Paula, thank you so much. I love you with my whole heart. I appreciate you saying yes to me coming on this podcast. We have had an amazing time, you all. Again,
Yes.
if this is your first time checking us out, please don't let it be your last time. And if you haven't shared this podcast episode out with a girlfriend, go ahead and share it out now that you know what we were talking about. Maybe there's someone specific that you want to share it out to. Go ahead and share it out to now. And make sure that you subscribe, do all that good stuff so that you know when we are having our next episode release. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us on the Healthy Woman Podcast. My name is Dr. Makeba, your host. Have an amazing, wonderful, intentional day. We love you. Peace.